Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is directed by James Gunn, and it stars Chris Pratt, Bradley Cooper, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Will Poulter, and Chakudi Iwuji. As of recently, superhero fatigue is growing into a real issue amongst general audiences and critics. After Avengers Endgame, Marvel Studios has been a lot less consistent with creating good content. Even though I loved Spider-Man No Way Home, and I thoroughly enjoyed Black Panther Wakanda Forever and Shang-Chi, everything else that Marvel Studios has made has either been mediocre or just outright bad. Films such as Love and Thunder and Multiverse of Madness I gave relatively lukewarm reviews, but these movies have kinda aged like milk for me. But Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is my favorite MCU movie post-Endgame. Now, I loved Spider-Man No Way Home. Seeing Tobey and Andrew again was truly incredible. But the first act of that film was kind of rough. And not to play the comparison game here, but I feel that this is just a better made film overall. The reason why this film was such a breath of fresh air is that it was allowed to exist as its own narrative. It wasn't concerned with fitting in under the Marvel umbrella, to be chock-filled with cameos and Easter eggs and other things that connect to the greater cinematic universe, and for it ultimately to be a trailer for whatever Marvel is cooking up next. This was allowed to exist as a story that James Gunn wanted to tell. It was a James Gunn film first, and a Marvel movie second. James Gunn was able to craft an emotionally potent, character-driven film that managed to balance humor and drama. This is something that Marvel has struggled with forever. Even during the quote-unquote golden age, it just didn't know when to stop telling jokes. This film knows when to stop telling jokes, and when it gets serious, it gets serious. And to a shocking point, honestly. This film really stretches that PG-13 rating, especially in the flashback scenes, where we finally get to see Rocket's origin story and the abuse that he sustained under the High Evolutionary. These scenes are incredibly difficult to watch. This is probably the darkest material that the MCU has tackled as of yet. If you have young children, I would maybe think twice before taking them to this movie. I could really see this film scarring a generation of kids, kind of like how Temple of Doom and Return to Oz scarred a generation of kids. I've been saying this for years now, but I feel that the MCU should dive into some more adult material and grow up with its target audience, which is in fact the generation of kids that grew up watching these movies. And this film is certainly a step in the right direction. And this is, of course, the first MCU movie to have an uncensored F-bomb in it. And I can't be happier. Also, this film is actually really funny. As said earlier, this film knows when to crack a joke. And most of all, the jokes in this film are actually really funny, other than another MCU movie I'm thinking of. Love and Thunder. Sorry. The dynamic between Drax and Mantis is at its peak here, though the character of Drax is actually given some character depth, rather than being shoved aside and only used for comedic relief. Drax is a character that could easily get on my nerves, and he kind of began to cross that line for me in Volume 2 and Infinity War and Endgame. But here he's actually given a meaningful character arc. I have always enjoyed the soundtracks of these films, but I think this one might be my personal favorite. It is easily the most eclectic out of the three. You have Radiohead's Creep, the acoustic version, Crazy on You by Heart, We Care a Lot by Faith No More, and my personal favorite, In the Meantime by Spacehog. There are no shortage of great songs that can be found here, and they are used really well in this film, especially Radiohead's Creep. Okay, now I'm going to get into spoiler territory, so if you've never seen this film, I would click off this video right now. This feels kind of strange to say about a big budget blockbuster, but go support this movie. Tell the big wigs at Disney that we want more movies like this. The High Evolutionary might not be my favorite Marvel villain, but he is easily the most dastardly. I have never loved to hate a villain in a Marvel movie this much. In the age of Marvel villains being sympathetic, it is such a breath of fresh air to see one that is just purely and simply evil. After watching him viciously murder Lila, Teebs, and Floor, I was rooting for him to be taken out in the most medieval way possible. Speaking of that scene, Rocket's scream that he lets out is so difficult to listen to. You can absolutely feel just the immense pain, guilt, and sorrow that he is feeling in this moment. And seeing the High Evolutionary mock his scream just sealed his fate for me. After that point, I wanted to see him go through a wood chipper. This is definitely Rocket's film. After seeing this film, I could easily see what James Gunn was meaning when he said that Rocket was the heart of this whole trilogy. And he was also really smart to leave Rocket's origin story for the end of the trilogy. You know, he was so closed off about his upbringing that once the Guardians find out about it, so do we. So does the audience. This made me fully realize how much I cared about this character, and finally see him declare himself as his comic name Rocket Raccoon was a moment I didn't know I wanted, but I am so grateful that this happened. I do have one issue with this film, and that is the inclusion of Adam Warlock. He was, of course, set up in Volume 2, so James Gunn was kind of forced to include him here. And I know most die-hard comic fans are really going to take issue with how he was adapted here, but I mostly just take issue with the fact that he didn't need to be in this movie. And also his redemption arc felt very rushed for me. It was too quick and too late. This film's ending brought me so much joy. Finally seeing all these characters happy just felt so rewarding. This film's ending was such a satisfying yet heartbreaking finale to these character arcs. And I fear if you go back and include these characters in more projects, you risk undoing all the work that James Gunn put in. I mean, I would be lying if I said that I didn't want to see these characters again. Though, since it's Disney we're talking about, we are most likely going to see these characters again, but I just hope that they return in a meaningful way and not in a forced or contrived way. But as time goes on, I begin to realize that this might be wishful thinking. Overall, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was a beautiful yet emotionally potent conclusion to the Guardians trilogy. It is not only my favorite MCU movie post-Endgame, it is possibly one of my favorite MCU movies in general. It is easily top 5 favorite MCU. Overall, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 gets an A. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed my review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And if you did, make sure to give this video a like. And if you want more content like this, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell notification so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. And shout out to Andrew Ridgely and Circuit City. Thanks for watching.